In Avengers Infinity War, Thanos appears to be far beyond the power level of any of the other heroes that he comes against in the events of that film. When he fights one of the most powerful Avengers in the opening, Hulk, he defeats him fairly easily and without the use of any of the Infinity Stones. He even leaves Thor, another one of the most powerful Avengers, on the ship to fend for his own life, instead of going out of his way to kill him. And beyond this, he never directly kills any of the Guardians of the Galaxy before he has to sacrifice Gamora in order to obtain the Soul Stone. In Thanos' mind, all of the Avengers are completely below him as far as strength and power, especially after the more Infinity Stones the Mad Titan manages to come into possession of. There is, however, a single Avenger that Thanos actually does fear, a single Avenger that he would go out of his way in order to kill, and one Avenger that he believes could eventually foil his plan, but again, just one. That Avenger being Tony Stark, Iron Man. Before we break down exactly why Thanos does in fact fear Tony Stark, I do want to remind you guys about the Infinity Gauntlet giveaway. To enter, all you have to do is like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me below who you think the most powerful MCU character is. But back to the video, again, Tony Stark being the only Avenger and character in Infinity War that Thanos actually fears, and perceives as a threat to his plan. But why exactly is this? First, let's talk about how Thanos actually knows of Tony Stark. It's not by the power of the Soul Stone, however there are theories that did in fact help. It was confirmed in an interview by the Russo brothers that Thanos is aware that Tony Stark is the individual that thwarted Loki's plans in the Avengers movie. The first Avengers movie, that is, in 2012. Thanos was extremely impressed by Tony Stark's showings in that film, being of course just a mortal. Still though, despite only possessing a suit of armor, Thanos believed that because of Tony Stark, he was ultimately defeated in New York. This is exactly what was said by the Russos. When it comes down to it, Thanos knows Stark is the man who thwarted his efforts to take over Earth via Loki in 2012's The Avengers, which is why he's aware of Stark from the original Battle of New York as the person who undid his plan. This giving extra meaning to Thanos having respect for Iron Man. It was what Tony Stark did after the Avengers though that truly frightened Thanos. Thanos is aware of the ongoings on Earth and was aware of what Tony Stark was up to, doing anything he could to prepare for an unknown threat. That unknown threat, of course, we learned being Thanos, and of course Iron Man learned was Thanos in Infinity War, the individual behind the Chitauri invasion and the Battle of New York in the first Avengers. Thanos grows to fear Tony Stark because he prepares, and prepares on a massive scale. He becomes a futurist, just as Thanos is. They're exactly alike, two sides of the same coin, one working to achieve balance in the universe, and one doing anything they can to stop that balance. Quote, I think Thanos has the most specific connection to Tony Stark because Tony is a futurist and he has predicted a threat like Thanos. Thanos has lived in Tony's brain even though he couldn't name it. Tony is the most desperately driven down to the core to react against something like Thanos. I think this is intrinsic to Tony's psychology, and because Tony started it all with Iron Man, he has a special connection to the threat that's facing him now. Thanos doesn't fear Tony Stark because he's the most naturally powerful or gifted of the Avengers. He fears him because he's the only Avenger that has looked to the future and specifically prepared for Thanos, not knowing exactly what he was preparing for, but preparing nonetheless. As a little side note, this is why I believe Tony Stark will be extremely dangerous in Avengers Endgame, way more dangerous than he was to Thanos in Infinity War. Now specifically because Stark knows what he's fighting. In Infinity War, putting up a phenomenal battle but losing in part because he did not know his enemy. But back to what the Russo brothers had to say about the connection between Thanos and Stark. This connection going all the way back to the opening of Infinity War and explaining the mindset of Thanos and why he views himself as a spiritual warrior and of course as the hero of this story, not the villain. In the opening, once Thanos disposes of his armor, he almost becomes a holy warrior where he doesn't spend a lot of his energy intentionally trying to murder people unless they are in some way a threat to his agenda. Almost no one ends up being a threat to this agenda except for Tony, who I think he feels has a sort of existential connection to Thanos. There is also the popular theory that it is the Mind Stone that has actually cursed Tony Stark to some extent, as well as maybe even Thanos, as we know Thanos held the Mind Stone in his possession and eventually gave it to Loki to help him conquer Earth. In Age of Ultron, it is Tony seeing through the Mind Stone and holding Loki's scepter that actually draws him to create Ultron. Ultron being a weapon weapon that Tony believes could one day potentially stop Thanos, a threat that he did not know at the time. It is this deep connection, either through Thanos' knowledge of Tony and not the other way around, that draws the two of them into conflict with one another. And potentially, maybe it's the Mind Stone connecting the two of them. But that is the answer as to why Thanos actually feared Iron Man, and why he was the only Avenger that Thanos was willing to kill. But leave your own thoughts on this in the comments down below, and Thanos and Tony Stark's complex and interesting relationship with one another. How do you guys think this will ultimately conclude in Avengers Endgame? And leave all of your theories down below. Again guys, the Gauntlet giveaway still continues, so do not forget to enter. Thank you as always so much for watching, subscribe to join our team, and have a great day.